light is invisible. I don't mean that we don't have the instrumentation to see it. I mean it defines invisibility. It is totally formless. And it behaves in the same way the Bible describes God. That's why the Bible states God is light. God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Well, a physicist would use a different set of words, but the words would mean the same thing. That's why they say that the experience we call life, everything, is just vibration. It's just energy. And if you ask them, what is the name of that energy, that vibration? They would say light. So light is the formless womb of creation from where life spontaneously emerges. And so light and life are two expressions of the same state. Light is the formless, what you could call spirit, and life is the formed expression. And so when I look at light, it's hard to describe it because the average person, when you say light, they say, oh yeah, sure, I look outside, it's light. No, that's brightness. Brightness is a perceptual phenomenon that occurs within consciousness. Light cannot be seen. No one has seen light. They just experience brightness, which they relate to light. But we have dreams at night. And in our dreams, there's enormous amounts of light. Yet our eyes are closed. Where is that light coming from? And so the light is really inseparable from consciousness. This is why light and consciousness are also spoken about identically throughout history. This is why we speak about people becoming enlightened or illumined. What does it mean to be enlightened? It essentially means that the light of God, this invisible ground of reality, traverses our essence, and no part of it is reflected or absorbed. It's almost like if you had a perfect piece of glass and light went through it, what went in would come out. There would be no loss of light. But if you had imperfections in that glass, little specks or a surface that caused, you would lose some light. Some would be absorbed, some would be reflected, some would be changed or diffracted. The same thing happens in the human being. The ideas that we have been conditioned by, what we call our beliefs, are the factors that limit the light so that we experience a smaller aspect of reality, probably because that's as much of a bite as we can digest. So there's an appropriateness to it. And then as our appetite for life and light expands, something within us becomes more receptive. And those beliefs begin to melt away. They're not replaced by new ones. They just begin to melt away. And what replaces them is the opposite of belief, which is truth. And so that's the truth that Jesus says will set us free. It's not that my ideas will set me free. It's that an ultimate truth that's beyond that can do that. And so light is the essence of our being. All matter is frozen light. So everything we experience that appears solid, if you could magnify it enough, you would keep noticing that you'd see particles and particles and then it would all just disappear. And you'd realize that there's nothing there. So where does the something come from? Because if there's nothing out there, that means that this is also nothing. And yet we have this experience. And this experience is not in the external world, and it's not in our brains. It's really quite fascinating because we look out and we experience brightness and we say that it's light. We experience colors and we're sure they're out there. They're part of the environment. And we hear sounds and smells and we taste things and we feel things. And we sense that that's a backdrop upon which we live our lives. But a physicist looks at that and looks carefully and realizes there's no brightness, there are no colors, there are no smells, there are no tastes, there are no sensations. So years ago, people would say, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there, will it make a sound? And everyone says, well, of course, a tree falls, it makes a sound. But it doesn't. Sound can only be experienced by an ear that is in some way connected with something called consciousness. If there is no ear and consciousness with it, there is no appreciation of what we call sound. The only thing that exists is vibration, which makes no sound. And the same thing is true with the pictures. And so then the neuroscientist says, well, it's all in your brain. Well, we look inside the brain and we see trillions of neurons, but we don't see anything that looks like a picture. We don't see anything that resembles brightness. There is no place in the brain where there are colors or sounds or tastes or smells or sensations. Well, that's rather fascinating. It's not out there. It's not in the brain. And yet we have this experience. And this experience is the only thing that's really true because it's not out there and it's not in here. So what is this experience? This is what we call consciousness, the thing that no one can describe. And we want to attribute it to this body. It's my consciousness. But at an ultimate level, there is a seeing or noticing without a noticer. And that's what the physicists term non-local consciousness versus what we call local consciousness, which is the ideas of the mind. So how is this all related to presence? Something is guiding everything that is. Something is guiding the movement of the planets. They don't wake up in the morning and say, I think I'll go this way today. They're on an orbit, and they remain on that orbit. We're on an orbit. You could call it our life's journey. And just as that orbit is set for those planets, our orbit is also set. It has to do with our reason for being. We think that, oh, we can decide to do this and we can decide to do that. And it certainly does appear that way from some of the experiences we have. But what happened to me as I was writing this last book and some of the early stages of it that you and I worked on, as I went through the process, I realized, oh my God, my life has been set out for me. There weren't any mistakes. everything was a stepping stone that kept bringing me to this place. And as I look back, I realized that all of it was a surprise, that I really had nothing much to do with it. And it was very profound for me, the recognition of my whole life has been guided. Here as an eye doctor, I was led to believe that we're looking for life, and now I discover life is looking for me. And so what is presence? Presence is the state when life finds me, and without a word, the sensation is, thank God I'm home. And in that moment, everything in the universe is lined up, and that's called congruence. Everything is lined up, and so what is congruence? If you were in space and you looked at a big city like Los Angeles with all of its freeways and so on, if it was in a state of congruence, you'd have trillions of cars, but not a single traffic jam. Everything looks like it's going in its own direction, but it's all following some master plan that we cannot even imagine, which causes it to always be in a state of flow, no congestion. And so congruence just means that everything is occurring in such a way that nothing is ever interfered with on any level by anything else. In other words, everything is aware of everything else all at the same time. How does that happen? Because at a fundamental level, you and I do not actually exist. We're just part of the fabric of reality, which includes everything, which means, as Chief Seattle said, we're all one. That's what the quantum field is. It's just one. So that for me is how light and presence and congruity all meld together to become one.